Hello everybody, my name is Dee and welcome to Books and Quirks. Today I'm going to be giving you my Nonfiction November TBR. So I don't plan on reading like all nonfiction during the month of November. I think that would be too much for me. But I do have some books that I hope to get to, and we'll see how I do by the end of the month. Nonfiction, although I do read the occasional nonfiction now and then, it's not a genre that I generally reach for. So I like Nonfiction November because it kind of pushes me to read more nonfiction. So let me just get right into it. I will leave all of the information below, including Olive's announcement from A Book Olive, who kind of, explained the prompts. So there are 4 prompts: design, sport, true, and voice. And you can kind of play around with these prompts. You can interpret them however you want, and you can even stretch them quite a bit if you want to or need to. So let me get right into it. So the first prompt is design, and for that I'm going to read The Royal Art of Poisons by Eleanor Herman. So The Royal Art of Poisons is kind of about the hygiene and the creation of, cosmetics and all of the poisons that existed in all of the everyday things that women used or people used throughout the centuries. So I interpreted design as, anything having to do with artistry or creation or the making of things. So that's why I put this book into that category. So I did stretch it quite a bit. But I've had this book on my TBR for quite a while, and I've been wanting to get to it because I just find it so fascinating. Women during the Tudor era, for example, wore makeup that had mercury in it and arsenic, and they were so concerned about poisons. Rich people or royalty would have people like taste their food before they ate it and lick their spoon and stuff like that. Yet they didn't realize that the everyday things that they used contained poisons, and they were slowly poisoning themselves. So I think this book will be really interesting, and I can't wait to get to it. The next prompt is sport. Now, this is the only prompt that I don't have a book for. I was going to read one of the books that, Olive recommended, but in the end, I just wasn't excited about anything. So I'm just going to kind of skip over this prompt for now. The next book I have is for the prompt of true, and that is The Good Neighbor by Maxwell King. So this is the true story of Fred Rogers, who everyone knows if they grew up in the 80s and 90s as Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. I loved Mr. Rogers as a very little girl, and I don't know, I just loved him. As he came in the door, he greeted you, he would take off his cardigan. He always had a cardigan on and hanging on the back of his chair, and he would take off, his shoes and just be in his, it was kind of like you were in his living room, and he would talk to you, like you were an adult. It was meant for little kids, but, I just loved him so much, and I want to read more about him because I know in his life he was a very kind man, a very generous man. And yeah, so that is The True Story of Fred Rogers, written by Maxwell King, and that's for the true prompt. The next prompt is voice, and for that I'm reading Empty Mansions. Empty Mansions is a book that follows a heiress that lived during the Golden Age, the Gilded Age, in the 1800s, called Huguenot Clark. And, she was one of the big heiresses of the time, along with the Rockefellers and the Vanderbilts. But she was a very odd woman in the sense that she was very much a recluse. Nobody saw her for decades in the later part of her life. And she was also very eccentric. And she even chose to live her life, even though she was healthy, like the last decade of her life, in a hospital. So I'm really interested to read this. It talks about, not only Huguenot Clark, but her family and how they made their, millions of dollars. And I don't know. I was looking, this was recommended from Olive of a book Olive. I always get recommendations from her. She's great. And I don't know, it just seemed really intriguing. So I have this on audiobook, and the reason it fits the voice prompt is another stretch, but it's because when you listen to the audiobook, you get to hear Huguenot Clark's real voice. There are a lot of recordings of her during the time, and it's really neat to hear her voice. I do have a couple of other books that I hope to get to during the month of November that really don't fit any prompts. So the first one is Furiously Happy by Jenny Lawson. And this is a book that I've had my eye on for quite a while. It was published a few years ago, so it's quite old by now. But it's a collection of stories and essays, I believe, that, are very humorous and help, I think she talks a little bit about her, how dealing with depression, and it's supposed to be very uplifting. So I hope that's the case. And yeah, so Furiously Happy by Jenny Lawson is another one that I have the ebook of. Another one along the same vein of just, light-hearted and uplifting and funny is Hyperbole and a Half by Ali Brash. So this is another collection of stories and anecdotes, I believe, written by Ali, that also is supposed to be quite funny. So I don't know anything about these books other than the very general of its humorous collection. So hopefully I can get to that as well. So the last nonfiction that I have is going to be a reread, but I haven't read this in like 10 years. And I was thinking of picking it up if I was in the mood for something a little bit more serious. And that is The Glass Castle by Jeanette Walls. Now, I read this about 10 years ago. I don't remember a whole lot about it. I just remember kind of very general gist of it. But this follows, it says, The Glass Castle is a remarkable memoir of resilience and redemption and revelatory look into the family, at once deeply dysfunctional and uniquely vibrant. So it follows Jeanette's childhood. And yeah, so if I want something more serious, this is what I'm going to pick up in the month of Nonfiction November. So those are all of the books that I plan to read on Nonfiction November. Like I said, I don't know if I'll get to all of them, but I wanted kind of a variety, and I never did find a book to fit the sport challenge. I mean, I had some ideas. I had written down like 3 books, 2 that I got from Olive and 1 that I found on my own, but they just weren't exciting to me at all. So I was just like, rather than stress myself out or force myself to read something I don't want to read, I just skipped over that challenge. But anyway, I've watched a lot of videos of you all out there of what you plan to read if you are participating in Nonfiction November. So anyway, I hope you all are having a great week, and I will see you all very, very soon. Bye.